I've always been drawn to the fact that we have only one life to live. Don't make it a conditioned life. And I was blessed to have parents who said, basically, do whatever you want, just be successful at it. You can't live off us forever. On my own, I decided, well, I wasn't going to play the safe thing per se, because that to me is, you kind of blew it, in my opinion, if you play the safe route and decide on a conventional path. If you don't have a calling towards something else, then that's fine. Then just do that. But if you do have a calling to something else and to deny it for the secure route, as far as I'm concerned, you really are missing the boat. So I want to do something that would be a source of great passion for me, that would be about expressing my voice. And at the time, I thought screenwriting made sense for me because I had a belief about myself that I was not good with people. And because my mother's Chinese, my father's Jewish, I look different from a lot of people too. And so I was not popular. So I thought, well, screenwriting is a good fit for me because that way I can just be behind my computer the whole time and just like cranking out stories. And I love the impact of movies too. I still do. The fact that you create something that lasts forever, and I'm very impact oriented. I began to unpack the story I had about I'm not good with people. I need to be behind a computer or something that doesn't involve me really being the center of attention. I got that that was really a belief I had that just needed to be retired and given up. And I believe that if you are here to have an impact, you need to be out there with people. You're not going to do it from behind a computer all the time. You got to be out there with people. You look at the greatest examples in human history, whether it's Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela or Abraham Lincoln. This is what eventually drew me into the world of public speaking, was seeing that the impact that you could have being out there with people and communicating to a large audience, that's what it had to be about. And I had to get through whatever stories and blocks I had about that to really live that commitment I had for the life of impact and fully expressing myself. That was my calling, as it turned out.
This is episode 9 of the Ownstream podcast, featuring Jon Block.
Welcome to the Ownstream podcast. So happy you're with us this week. I'm Teresa Scova.
And I'm Stephen Shelley.
And we're really thrilled to bring you Jon Block. Jon I've known for a huge part of my life, certainly longer than any of our other Ownstream guests to date. And he's the younger brother of a really good friend of mine from childhood, Melissa. And, you know, Jon and I over the years, I haven't been in the same physical location as him for a long time, but our paths have just intersected interestingly over the years as we've been figuring out our careers. And, I hadn't seen him since probably, we graduated from high school. And then, I saw him in the middle of our careers when we were in New York City, both kind of struggling to figure out what we were doing with our lives. And I remember Jon had, he had just moved to Staten Island and didn't know what he was doing in New York City and was just kind of didn't know where he was in his career. And, now he's in such a beautiful place, really thriving in his what he sees as his purpose in life. And that has been a tremendous guide to him. What's so great about this, there's so many great things about this interview with Jon, and he speaks really beautifully about, what it was like to, be on a career path and really feel like he was doing something that he was in film, and he had known since he was a child that this was the thing he was meant to do. He was going to do this thing, and it just didn't work out for him. He kept hitting roadblock after roadblock, and he didn't really understand. He moved back home with his parents. And then he really, he did some real soul searching, and he talks about that better than I could speak of it here. And he really came face to face with what he sees now as his calling in life. And it's very strong and very forceful and comes through really beautifully in the interview.
Yeah, he talks really clearly about his calling, in fact, and the art of the calling and identifying that. But, about a year or so ago, I made a friend here locally, and he posted a photograph of he and Jon Block at some event.
Right.
Seminar here, I think, in San Diego called Speaker Venture. And so I clicked through on Jon. As I'm being an entrepreneur, I'm always interested in learning about what people are teaching and coaching and helping others with. And so I clicked through to his profile, and I noticed that he was friends with Teresa. And so it certainly raised the question, and then we began to think of him in the light of entrepreneurship, because I'm not sure you knew what he had evolved into doing.
No, I hadn't.
And so this painted this really amazing and interesting portrait of him. And so we began to think of him as an Ownstream guest, of course, because he's in the entrepreneurship space and has a lot of other things of interest to offer as well. The one thing I do want to highlight about this conversation, which I personally found very interesting, was he's an entrepreneur. He works with entrepreneurs, and I think he very, very beautifully paints an accurate portrait of what that means today. I think when people hear that word, they think of Mark Cuban or Richard Branson, these very kind of larger than life, big, exciting male figures, and or you might think of like entrepreneurs of the past that were big and significant. Whereas now, entrepreneurship, the bar to entry into entrepreneurship has never been lower. And I think both Teresa and I feel like one thing we want, one kind of submission, if you will, of the Ownstream platform is to inform people and inspire them to go out on their own and start their own business, as particularly online. Online entrepreneurship has never been bigger. It is getting bigger. It's not going to stop getting bigger. And for many people, the form that takes, particularly initially, is coaching. And so that's where Jon is really excellent, is helping people identify what they're great at and what it means to coach that to others and then present that in particular from the stage. So that's a long-winded way of saying that if you're even remotely interested in building a business online and want some inspiration and some framework for that, Jon can offer that, and that will come through in this interview. One other quick point I want to make is how having been at that for about a decade now myself, and I know Teresa and I've talked a lot about this with Ownstream and in past endeavors of ours, that the marketing to the prescribed marketing approaches that most everybody applies to their business now are very cookie cutter approached or designed, and Jon has a completely different take and really is striving for authenticity in marketing, and we talk a lot about that. So if you're already an entrepreneur and you're sort of bumping up against this wall of I'm supposed to do this with my marketing, quote unquote, you might get something out of this interview because Jon has a different take and it's very powerful.
Yeah, he has a beautiful way of I think that there are a lot of people who have a gift to give to the world. They have talents, they have interests, they have, things they might consider a hobby on the side of their career, but the things that really bring them joy, things they help their friends with, that would never think about turning that into a business, or, that they could make money doing X, Y, Z things that they love. And Jon really is about pulling that out of himself, pulling that out of others, showing people the gifts that they can give to the world.
Yeah, he makes it seem very accessible and doable. So, and I think that's a very, very powerful message in this age when there are many, many options other than hunkering down at a desk for, 3, 4, 5 decades, as the old path might have prescribed. So it's very exciting, and if that's of interest to you, I'm excited for you because I think you're going to get a lot out of this.
So that's great. So we'll be back afterwards to wrap up. Until then, enjoy this great interview with Jon Block. Great. Well, we'll get started. Jon, it's fantastic to have you on the podcast. This is such an exciting moment for me personally because I've known you personally for such a long time, as the brother of such a good friend of mine growing up, and our lives have taken, as sometimes beautifully do, very different courses, and then here we are kind of coming intertwined in so many of our interests, and so it's really I'm really excited to have you here.
Me too, Jon. Teresa seems particularly pumped, but I'm excited also.
I'm excited, you guys.
So why don't we get started? If you could tell us a little bit about your early life and your education. We know you went to USC Film School, and now you do something completely different from that. And sometimes people take an education course early in their lives. And at least I don't know if you ever thought this, so tell us, but, early on, I think when I was in high school and college, I thought I was making decisions for the rest of my life when I was making my education decisions. And then I found out that I was a growing and evolving human being, and many things would change. So just curious about, how things started out for you, and then maybe how they turned a bit into the work you're doing now.
Yeah, I always thought I was one of the lucky ones, and that I always knew what I wanted to do with my life. And that's when I was 7 years old. I remember seeing the movie The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger in theaters, and then exiting the theater, and my big brother who took me there saying wow, Arnold is so witty. He can kill the bad guys and just have these one-liners. He just drops. He just knows what to say every single time. He's so funny, just making up these lines on the spot. And my brother said, yeah, they write some really good lines for him. And when you're 7, you don't know the concept of how movies actually get made. But that was my first realization of wow, there's a profession called screenwriter that exists. And that's when I knew that's what I'm meant to do, unquestionably. So then I went to USC Film School for it. And I was one of 24 students in their program. And USC, if you know anything about it, it's considered to be the best film school there is. Yep. And I spent the better part of my 20s up until about 27, 28 trying to break in. And I didn't sell anything during that time. I actually made no money. And I was working every odd job I could to support myself, trying to break into Hollywood and fulfill this lifelong passion of mine, this calling. The one thing I was here to do on this planet was to write movies. And by my late 20s, nothing had happened for me. And so I decided to quit. And that was probably the toughest decision I made professionally, where it wasn't working for me. I moved back in with my parents, and that was when I thought, well, I might be the world's biggest loser, because there I was at 29 years old, living with my mom and dad, and they had scaled down dramatically since Melissa and I gone off to college, so it was a much smaller place living in. And I'm thinking, well, what do I do now? The last time I had made any money at anything was working at Applebee's, which is one of the odd jobs I had. I thought, well, maybe that's the path for me. Maybe I'll go back to Applebee's, given my experience there. I could probably get a waiter job pretty easily, and then work my way up to manager, and then regional manager, and so on. Maybe I'll be like an Applebee's guy. That'd be my path in life. And then what happened is that I did what I think a lot of people do when nothing else seems to be working in life at all. I turned to personal growth. Right. And I went to a seminar called the Landmark Forum. For me, that was the one that was that cracked me open. The notion that we can have some management of our thoughts. My thoughts were ravaging me. My thoughts of I'm a loser, I can't do anything right, I'm not meant to be successful, to actually begin to train our minds so that we could have some ability to manage our thoughts and consequently create our lives. And that was my first experience with actually doing work around this. And other people have done many other things. I'm not saying Landmark's the only thing. That was the thing that happened to be for me. And I decided to become a coach. Was ultimately my decision. I really got that the reason we're here is to make a difference in people's lives. At least in my view, that what's the meaning of life? There it is. Make a difference in people's lives and love one another. That's why we're on this earth. And I can share more about the ups and downs of what happened once I became a coach. I'll share about that. But that was basically how I went from screenwriter to coach.
Well, one of my real passions, Jon, is studying this notion of a calling. And maybe you could kind of, so if that were sort of the outside appearances of what was happening, maybe you could just sort of trace that idea through those different eras. Say, what did you think your calling was in and around film? And then maybe you were kind of looking for something. And then what did you think what did it shift into as a result of going to Landmark and the work you did?
Yeah, this is one of those Steve Jobs connect the dots kind of insights that I've had about it, where the calling I had with Screenwriting. I've always been drawn to the fact that we have only one life to live. Don't make it a conditioned life. And I was blessed to have parents who said, basically, do whatever you want, just be successful at it. You can't live off us forever, which I think is a very reasonable expectation to set.
That's a fair request, yeah.
And on my own, I decided, well, I wasn't going to play the safe thing per se, because that to me is, you kind of blew it, in my opinion, if you play the safe route and decide on a conventional path. If you don't have a calling towards something else, then that's fine. Then just do that. But if you do have a calling to something else and to deny it for the secure route, as far as I'm concerned, you really are missing the boat. So I want to do something that would be a source of great passion for me, that would be about expressing my voice. And at the time, I thought screenwriting made sense for me because I had a belief about myself that I was not good with people. And because my mother's Chinese, my father's Jewish, I look different from a lot of people too. And so I was not popular. I was not considered attractive or desirable to be around. And it's something I really struggle with. So I thought, well, screenwriting is a good fit for me because that way I can just be behind my computer the whole time and just like cranking out stories. And I love the impact of movies too. I still do. The fact that you create something that lasts forever. And I'm very impact oriented. So then how this morphed is that through doing Landmark and then many other personal growth seminars and other work around this, I began to unpack the story I had about I'm not good with people. I need to be behind a computer or something that doesn't involve me really being the center of attention. I got that that was really a belief I had that just needed to be retired and given up. And I had to really get control of this because it was really costing me a lot in terms of the things I was committed to, one of which was having an impact. And I believe that if you are here to have an impact, you need to be out there with people. You're not going to do it from behind a computer all the time. You got to be out there with people. You look at the greatest examples in human history, whether it's Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela or Abraham Lincoln. This is what eventually drew me into the world of public speaking, was seeing that the impact that you could have being out there with people and communicating to a large audience, that's what it had to be about. And I had to get through whatever stories and blocks I had about that to really live that commitment I had for the life of impact and fully expressing myself. That was my calling, as it turned out.
And Jon, how, sometimes these beliefs we have about ourselves, right, they go all the way back to time in our life we can't even remember. And I know Stephen and we spent a lot of time looking at these limited, just totally false beliefs we have about ourselves and our potential in our lives. And I think so many people have those conditioned into them. Like, how did you do that? How did you you said it was time to retire that belief. Like, yes. So how did you do it?
Oh man, a lot of crying and every personal growth thing you can go through, I guess. I mean, just recreating experiences from childhood. I don't want to get too processy about it, but it came down to having a commitment to have an extraordinary life. So for instance, here's a very real example. When I was starting my business, like any business, there was a challenge around making money. So in that time when cash flow was non-existent, as in cash was not flowing at all, my stories about being a failure just came roaring back. All those years that I had tried to make money at screenwriting and had not produced anything after all those years. And then even though this was in a different field altogether, I figured, well, I'm the common denominator. Clearly, there's something broken about me that just does not know how to make money. I thought I was a money repellent, like how there's law of attraction. Mine was the law of repulsion, right? Where money would come towards me and then at the last minute make an abrupt U-turn and say, nah, just kidding.
Yeah.
So I knew that that was a belief that I had because there were other people who were able to make money, and I had the recognition that these people were not necessarily more brilliant than me, or they did not care about people more than I did. I knew that was definitely not the case in that one. So there was something in my belief system that was really the issue that needed to get transformed. So I really grabbed that bull by the horns, that money story of mine, and I committed whatever it took. I was going to wrestle that money story to the ground. So I remember doing Peak Potential's Millionaire Mind Intensive, the T. Harv Eker one. I remember reading the book, The Soul of Money. Those are two that had particularly large impressions on me. I did another seminar called Money Breakthrough Experience, right? One of my mentors at Thrive Academy. And seminars, books, discussion, just through communication, like there's this money belief that I have. And eventually the dams broke. And that's my belief that will be the inevitable result. If you just take any issue that you're having and you say, whatever it takes, I'm going to wrestle this bull to the ground, then the dams will break and then there'll be this influx of success. Something will happen. And for me, that was when I finally did an event where I made $12,000 from one speaking engagement. And then I realized, wow, that story was clearly just a story.
Right.
I'm fighting back and forth with this story. I'm like, wow, I can really dismiss it as like total crap, that it's truly now put in the past. So it's a mixture, I think, of doing the inner work first, and then there'll be some physical evidence that finally shows up, and that's kind of the knockout punch to the story. And as you grow, it's like some of the story can come up again and again, but because you did the big work of transforming it, you're able to manage it. At least I've been able to, as it comes up again and again.
It sounds like you're very active in your approach to that. I think it's easy to feel powerless in the face of results. And what I like about what you just described was that it's like there's kind of two steps in a way. Being aware of it as just a belief, as not a reality, as a mental construct. And then two, as it was installed, it can be deinstalled, and it needs an active element to that, which it sounds like that's what you were describing, getting involved, going to events, reading books, etc., which I totally relate to.
I love that point, Stephen, that it can be installed, therefore it can be deinstalled. Because when we're babies, we don't have the money story.
Right.
Right.
They cannot exist with us. And we're a lot happier for it, right, as babies. So clearly at some point, things got shifted and that belief got installed. And therefore, we have the capacity to uninstall it. And to me, it's just tragic when people don't take advantage of the fact they have the power to reprogram themselves. It's one of the greatest gifts of being human, is that we can reprogram ourselves. And to me, that's when life really becomes an adventure.
Yeah, totally. So I want to talk to you about the evolution of your business, how that got started. And so you went through a landmark process, and it sounds like a number of other things as and I by the way, I identify, I had a long career in the arts, in the theater, and did all sorts of different things, and then have now moved on into kind of more online businesses, because that really sings to me much more clearly than the arts or entertainment as they used to. And I relate to the evolution of a calling, which is a really cool thing. I may do some writing on that. And so as you were talking, I was thinking back to how my first business began, and I was wondering, why don't you talk to us a little bit about forming your first company and how that happened around your excitement of coaching and making an impact?
Mm-hmm. Well, my first company, I didn't mention this, but I was an event promoter for about 3 years. I was doing music and arts festivals, 2 to 3 years. And that was my first experience with entrepreneurship. And so I can speak to that was the initial powerful growth experience of, I want to take charge of my life. I didn't want to be subservient to any gatekeepers, to anyone telling me, hey, we're going to greenlight your movie. We're going to give you a budget of $20 million. Actually, we change your mind, make it $5 million. I didn't want to be involved with those kinds of conversations anymore. I wanted to be fully in charge of my life. And that was a big appeal of entrepreneurship. So after I knew I was hooked on that from doing the music and arts events. And after I did the personal growth work, then the calling to really spread transformation through my events, that became the next level, clearly. Oh. And with the challenges with that, so I shared about the money story that I had. There was also the fact that of how to get clients. Now, I had this Hollywood hustle mentality still, and also that I got fostered through my music and arts event promoter, where I would pass out a flyer to someone much sooner than I would shake their hand, because shaking their hand took too long. Yeah. But a flyer, you could be a lot more efficient.
Right.
That was my mindset I try to get coaching clients with. And that had to get transformed very quickly, because I saw that people were just looking at me with sheer disgust much of the time. And I became that guy in networking events that people were trying to avoid. Like, oh, here comes that guy. And I guess I've been whispered enough about in my life that I could identify that was what was going on. And all my stories came rearing up again of, oh, I'm just not good with people. And so I tried to go online for a bit and figuring, all right, I'm just going to focus on my Facebook fan page and just get a bunch of likes, and maybe then I'll make a bunch of money. That was about the extent of my business plan with that. And I got to 100 likes and I thought, yay, top of the mountain. Only I still had no money to show for it.
Right.
So then I'm like, oh, wow, I'm just not good at the business thing. And then finally the breakthrough happened when I invested in speaker training. And this is why I'm so passionate with what I do with Speaker Venture, which I'll share more about in a minute. But when I invested in speaker training, because I got that conceptually, like I said earlier, you want to have an impact in someone's life, whether you're Gandhi or someone who's just starting out in business, you have to do public speaking, especially if it's about transformation. If it's about making a before-after difference in people's lives, the best way to communicate that by far is through speaking to an audience. So I delivered my first few workshops, and I bombed really horribly. I remember getting frustrated with people when they weren't buying from me, or then feeling, oh, wow, I just didn't go to the opposite extreme and not even ask people to buy from me. I'm just going to put a stack of business cards, and if they're genuinely interested, they'll take one. The last thing I want to do is pressure people. I don't want to be that guy anymore. And that was just as ineffective going that route.
And Jon, by the way, what were you selling at the time?
It was business coaching is what I was selling at the time. I had some notion I could just help people get more customers, like largely through the mindset work. I had done so much on myself at the time. I thought, well, their mindset is the core of it, which in many ways is true, obviously. So that was my intention at the time. So the breakthrough that finally happened after I really applied the speaker training and created a signature talk that resulted in not trying to sell from stage and just kind of arm wrestle people into buying from me, but really towards serving them and really trusting, okay, I'm here in your life to make a difference, whether it's for 1 hour on a Thursday evening, or if we sit down and spend a little more time together, I'm here to make a difference for you in that respect. Or best case scenario for everyone is that we work together for, say, 6 months and get to make a difference for you that way. But in any case, it's all good. Even if you just came, you've no intention to buy anything, like, I'm not going to resent you anymore. I'm here to make a difference. Like, it's my responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, when I'm a trustee of someone's most sacred resource, their time, their decision to be there with me. I owe it to them. And I think it was that shift in perception that resulted in, I had about 30 people in the room for this one, probably more like 20 people in the room. And I gave out one-on-one appointments to the people in the room. And my intention was to get to 10 new clients. This was going to be my first time getting clients, but I was really determined I'm going to get to 10 clients, whatever it takes. And it turns out from that room, it took me 11 appointments to get to 10 clients.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And the one who said no, probably it was best that he said no.
It was a win-win.
Yeah. But those 10 clients, in my view, they should get VIP tickets to heaven. They really believed in me. And yeah, it was how I showed up for them that they were able to believe in me. But the fact that I was not the best business coach at the time, I was still figuring out a lot of things, means a lot to me. But that the self-confidence was the biggest breakthrough when I earned those $12,000 in 3 weeks from those 10 clients. And I knew that I could do this again and again and again. And that's what led me to eventually create Speaker Venture, which is my company. And we've been around for 2 years now. And the focus is really about helping entrepreneurs create workshops to speak on stages and be able to earn over $10,000 consistently from speaking on stages. And when we've done this time and time again, we've really created a system that we have down. People are able to plug into it, whether they're new or they've been at it for a while and just haven't gotten the results they wanted. They're able to get up on the stage and know exactly what to say, how to be about it so that they're authentic and truly in service, and people feel called to work with them in a really profound way. It's magical. And what really lights me up more than just the money that people make as a result of having worked with me in Speaker Venture, but it's really who they become as people. Where, like in my case, the decades-old story of I can't make money, or I'm just not good with people, success is meant for others, not me, or I'm just a shy person. That's a common one that people have. I'm not a leader. Who am I to get up on stage? All that crap just gets put into the past where it belongs, and then their true essence emerges. And that to me is beautiful because there's a ripple effect in all areas of their life, with their spouses, their children, their health. I've just seen it happen repeatedly with the people who have come through Speaker Venture. And that's what really inspires me most.
It's beautiful. And, I want to take one more word. You made a nice list there of all these sort of limits or false limits or false limiting beliefs. I think a lot of people, when they hear the word entrepreneur, immediately disqualify themselves from what that actually is. And I would have been that person 15 years ago. And, your business is for entrepreneurs, but I'd love to hear your view on this new world of entrepreneurship that's emerged in the last decade and a half online, which is wide open or is very, very open. And so from the point of view of like a speaker, you're on stage, you're talking about something that is of value to others, probably using story as a vehicle for that. Maybe there's a person listening to this who doesn't feel they have a story or any information or valuable skill to offer others. One of the main things I want from this podcast at large is for people to realize that's not the case, that there is something that they have or could potentially access very easily that they could then turn around and offer to others. From your viewpoint, working with entrepreneurs in this day and age, talk about what it means to be an entrepreneur now, sharing and offering value to others, and maybe even highlight that if you can think of any off the top of your head. I can think of a few of like really interesting niches that perhaps 20, 30 years ago you would have never thought that would be a business, and now it's probably a 7-8 figure business.
Yeah. So first off, to your point that anyone has inherent value to bring to others that others will be willing to pay abundantly for, that is so worth emphasizing, especially as someone who's new or interested in getting into this field. Just consider that if you've ever had a conversation with another human being, a younger sibling, a friend, a spouse, anyone, and it's made a lasting contribution to them where you can feel them light up, right? The world just got opened up a bit more for them. Well, if you're able to do that in a casual environment, completely unplanned, then you can definitely do it when you put your focused intention on it and really create a business from it. Okay, you just can. That is a fact. It's a certainty that you have it in you to be able to empower people and provide value in such a way that they'll be willing to pay you generously for it. The question of you, if you're really committed to it, is really what it comes down to. If you're committed to it, it'll happen for you. If you're not committed, it won't. Just like being on a diet or anything, right? Exercise program, same thing with running a business. If you're committed to it, it'll work. And if you're not, then it won't work for you. Regarding certain niches, I'm thinking about how good example would be energy healers. So a friend of mine, Siobhan Moran, she has an energy healing practice. And so someone like her, perhaps in the past, would have been charging $80 for a 1 hour session to do energy healing. Mm-hmm. And that would have been the ceiling for her business, right? She would have been inherently limited by how many hours there were in the week. And she would have been exhausted after giving 40 of those energy healing sessions in a week. And that would have been the ceiling on her income, right? Is those $80 an hour sessions. Right. Now, what Siobhan did is tie it to an urgent problem that her audience faces, which is the basic definition of a niche, in my view, is the group of people you serve and the urgent problem you solve for them. So someone who just says, I'm an energy healer, is not really falling into that niche description. They're not tying themselves to that. They're just saying, I'm an energy healer the way that you would say, I'm a painter or whatever, right? It's not really solving problems for people. And that's, to me, what defines an entrepreneur, is that you are solving problems for other people. Right, Steve Jobs, one of the ultimate entrepreneurs, solving problems for other people. Right. So, what Siobhan did was tie it to money, right? Which is a logical one because people will always pay for what can make them more money. So, she determined that the energy blocks that people experience are what hold them back from having greater prosperity in their lives. And she obviously has to be aligned with this fact and have some personal relationship with having created greater abundance for herself through doing energy work. And so she built her business around it, which is easily into the $1 million now per year, based on doing the energy healing that creates a much greater prosperity for people. So the key thing that's made her successful is the fact that it's tied to a benefit that people want. And if there's one thing worth obsessing over, and I tell my clients this all the time, it's the value and transformation that your people experience through working with you. There's anything that keeps stacking more and more and more. Like, we already have the money thing down, then we're going to improve your health. We're going to improve your sex life, whatever it is. As long as it's authentic, you can say these are byproducts of working with you, and your feeling in your body, your way of being on the planet, everything is going to get enhanced. Then that will allow people to say yes more easily and get to transform their lives with you, which is really what this is all about.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, I know you have a really different take on marketing, and there's a whole industry for this in the online space, supporting coaches that are trying to get their word out about their business and their offer, and formulas you can apply and all kinds of things. Steven's walked me through all of this from the many seminars he's taken. But you're really talking about service, and you're talking about a gift that you have to offer, that people have to offer, and pulling that out of somebody. Can you talk about a little bit more about, authenticity in marketing and ways that you've helped others appear in the marketplace as people have something to give and something that they so strongly believe in?
Yeah, I would love to, Teresa. So authenticity, as overused of a word as it is, is the baseline for all relationships. And I have found that it's much easier to communicate authentically when you're having a live conversation with people, as in a two-way communication, like what we're doing now, and a speaking engagement that's in person, or a one-on-one sales conversation where there can be a listening. Because I think most people would agree that the best conversations by far are one in which you're really being listened to. So I love the live interaction, because even though when I'm on stage, I'm the one doing the majority of the speaking, but all my speaking is given by my listening of the audience. And a lot of that listening has been done ahead of time, meaning I know what kind of people are going to be in the room, what their problems are. I've done that work to really listen for what their biggest struggles are, what are things they desire most. And in the moment, I'm still listening for what's in the room, what's alive, what's meant to come out. And that's how I am really able to be my most authentic self. And anyone who responds well to Speaker Venture, that's what I get told repeatedly is like, oh, this is so real. This is like none of the hype that you see in the seminar industry. It's just the real deal, and it's really imbued with service and respect and truly coming together as partners. Not that I'm trying to close anyone, but we are partners in this, and we're creating this movement called Your Business that's going to have a ripple effect in the world, and this is how I can align my energies. Now, I've had a struggle with taking this online. So there isn't a whole lot about me online. So I don't know, Stephen, what you've come across. It's been probably this like smattering of things like over the years, because there hasn't been a real focused intention on my part, because it's one of my struggles right now is how do I communicate authenticity online to make it profitable, of course, right? Because we all have finite resources, meaning time most of all. Should I put my energy just continually towards the offline where I know I can communicate and land with my people and be seen as an authentic, wise leader for them? That's what I have been doing for the past few years, and it's been really successful, and I'm really happy and fulfilled by it. And I know that there is that online audience that has largely been cut off from me. I've cut myself off from them. So it's one of my current challenges, how to bring greater authenticity. And I don't have a real answer for this, in my view. I haven't figured it out yet. That's why I'm not online yet. I know what I don't want to sound like. I know what turns me off deeply. I know what I'm sick and tired of out there. I know that the over-promising and under-delivering has got to go. I know that the manipulative nature and just overhyping and just whatever it takes to get people to open your email, whatever it takes to get them to click through and subscribe, whatever it gets them to click the buy button in the moment, this focus on closing. And I think it's because it's not a two-way conversation. When you're online, it's you at your computer building your opt-in pages, building your funnels, and it's very, very heady and hence cut off from source, cut off from the heart. And that's why it becomes all about strategy. I haven't been to these internet marketing summits, and partly it's because I don't want to be in that environment, because I know it's just a bunch of heady people who only care about their conversion rates. Not all of them.
Right.
Good segment of the population, like that's what they're into, because they spend their whole lives just being in their head, or the only thing they can possibly get excited about are the numbers. And I've done enough recognition in myself that I don't want to move in that direction. I moved away from that. So how do I continue this journey of coming from my heart and from source energy and bring it to the online world? And it's something I'm figuring out right now.
You know, I had an epiphany recently, or, well, I don't know if it's an epiphany, but we'll see. But I've been to all those seminars too, and have really crunched things down into the granular data that tends to lead you to. And you mentioned something interesting about being cut off from source, and I always feel very constricted and tight when I'm in that space. But I had an epiphany recently, and I think things are changing in the online space. I think it's evolving. I mean, it's still fairly new, that whole world, and that most marketing is a replacement for authentic value. And I think, when we have to describe things so perfectly just to get a person to click a button on their computer, then maybe what we're offering is not, shall we say, either right for them or right for us to be selling, because the necessary energy that could be there is just not there. I, for many years, was a dating coach long after I was done dating, and I felt that a lot. And so I think there has to be, as you're talking to, for lack of a better word, a congruency between what I'm doing and how I'm offering it. They have to be seamless. They have to kind of be the same thing. If I'm some sort of transformation coach and suddenly I'm on stage like building scarcity and social proof and doing all these different tactical things, which to some degree is okay, but if I'm overdoing it, I'm completely at odds with what I'm talking about.
And if it's true, what you said before, Jon, about that you believe, and I think we believe, that we have that there's a service each of us has to offer, right? There's a gift to offer. There's something we can offer the world, and I think by definition, if you have something to offer, there's someone to receive it, you know? I think, you know, so the idea, I love it, you know, the idea of being cut off from source, and Stephen said being constricted, like, you know, when you're trying too hard to fit something, that maybe that isn't the gift that's naturally being asked for by the world.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And to your point, Stephen, about leading with authentic value, I think there's a lot of merit to that. Video is a huge part of this. So when I do go online, video is going to be a huge part of it. I just know that offhand because it's the closest simulation to a live in-person experience, where it's the best shot of people seeing you authentically. And the job that I would have when I go online will be whatever medium. Just like I said earlier, if I get to be with someone for 1 hour, then I deliver as most extraordinary value as I can, so that if I never see them again, never hear from them again, they're going to feel, wow, that was a great use of my time. And then so on for every next level of the funnel, right? Whoever decides to progress, I owe them my very best at each step of the way. And this is different than the kind of withholding. That's another pattern I'm sick of seeing as well, where there's a withholding of value and say, oh, you got to buy the program if you want to get the value. And my reaction is, screw you. I'm not going to buy the program because you fail to deliver value on the front end. Why on earth would I believe that you're going to deliver value on the back end? It's like seeing a movie trailer where the trailer sucks. Why would I go see the movie itself, and where I'm actually going to spend my money and a lot more time? It doesn't make any sense. So there has to be extraordinary value on every level. I think that's what's going to always distinguish someone from the other, is out caring, is providing greater value than everyone else. You see what everyone else is doing, only in the sense of how you can go beyond that. Not from a competition standpoint, but just because you want to serve people as much as you can, and that can be a useful barometer for where everyone else is, so you can really stand in your value even more, knowing that you are just going the extra distance beyond everyone else. It's an exciting game to play, and I think that if you just surrender in it and just say it'll work out, I don't have to get too heady or strategic about it. Just people will respond to how much value I'm pouring into the planet and into people's lives. Then the right people will step forward. And your job is just to make it as easy as possible for them to say yes to the next thing.
So just to shift gears a little bit, what I've noticed is amongst entrepreneurs, and I think particularly when you're on stage a lot, or if that's a main focus of your work, thinking about kind of caring for yourself, whether that's fitness and food and kind of other elements of lifestyle, I would imagine that there's a premium to that. Talk a bit about maybe some ways you approach your life in terms of food and fitness, or maybe something you do maybe before you go on stage. I'd like to hear sort of what your relationship is to your body and the energy in your body. Yeah.
Self-care rituals, especially as I approach the end of my 30s, have been...
Oh, you're so young.
It's going to be really important as time goes on. It's been made really obvious to me from the universe that I can't go on pure adrenaline the way I used to, and just spunk and excitement. So it's a really great question you asked, Stephen. My self-care rituals get more and more complicated.
I'm so glad you
passing
said that.
year, if not each passing month. So on a daily basis, then I can share about what I do at the events as well. But on a daily basis, I believe strongly in a power hour. So this is from a book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And the recommendation is to really allow the first hour just for yourself. So do not wake up, pick up your phone, check email, Facebook. That's probably the worst thing that you can do. So devoid of electronics, just go enjoy this time for yourself. The one electronic exception would be, well, what I do is I listen to audios, right? So I fill my head with inspiring, transformational content. So right now I'm re-listening to Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Book.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I listen to in the mornings. And I take a morning walk loop that is about 20 minutes from where we live here in Colorado. And that way it's timed out. I'm not going to just let personal growth stuff like take over my entire day. I know 20 minutes is my time that I allow for myself to be inspired, get some deeper insights, and really set the foundation for my day. Then meditation is really important for me. I'll do some journaling, usually around gratitude when I come home, and then make some declarations for a day. I'm so grateful to have Ronnie as my wife and amazing partner. So grateful to have the friends in my life, having the perfect clients showing up. Then I'll meditate for about 10 minutes. And then I'm pretty much ready to start my day. Breakfast will be in there somewhere. And that's important too, is that when doing breakfast, you're doing breakfast. You're not checking emails or anything else. This is part of the power hour. So nutrition is something I've really had to embrace as well. Those are the major things on a daily basis. And then I do some version of it at nighttime as well, the nighttime meditation and completion of the day. And then Ronnie and I do a thing where we just share our blessings from the day. What are we so grateful for, and what are we manifesting for the future? We do that every night together. With the events, it's a bit more complicated because there's a lot more going on. And we have a lot of moving parts. The hours are from about 9 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. every day. We have a nighttime activity on 2 of those nights as well that can run from 10 to 11 in some cases. And so I'm on stage leading for much of that, and then preparing content for the next day, making last-minute adjustments based on what comes up in the room. So keeping my energy at a high level is really important. The interesting dichotomy with leading events is that it's both draining and gives you energy at the same time. And most performers, anyone who's been on stage can probably relate to this, that you're exhausted afterwards, but then in the moment, you are getting fueled by it. You really should be. So that's able to pull me through much of the time. And there is more that I can be doing during the live events, honestly. A mentor of mine, Jesse Corin, he keeps a massage therapist on hand for the entire weekend, although he's probably more than just a massage therapist. He probably does Reiki on him and energy healing, and just has a whole bag of tricks that he's just doing on him throughout the weekend. And during the breaks, during lunch, goes away and then just has that work done on him. Eating wise, I've had to be a lot more conscientious around this too. So going gluten-free, saying goodbye to a lot of the favorite things like dim sum, Chinese. Yeah. Like now there's nothing to eat at dim sum for me. Like buns, like pork is out and bread is also out too. So it's just the acceptance I've had, and cutting out caffeine is something I'm also clear on. That's not been serving me. So that's my current thing right now. And I found that it's allowed me to bring out a truer essence to myself, doing the no caffeine thing. So those are some of the rituals there.
Well, Jon, we know you've got just a couple more minutes. We have a quick 3-question sequence we always ask our guests at the end of each conversation, and then we'll give you a chance to just talk a little bit about what's maybe coming up for you and how people can connect with you online. I'll ask the first question. What book or books, and let's up to 3, would you recommend that every person should read?
Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. That one is entirely about saying yes to the present moment, which to me is the access we have to happiness, to having a life that truly works, is being present. So that'd be the first one. Next, Lynn Twist, The Soul of Money. That one really shifted the paradigm. There's such brilliance in that book, and her insights about making money and what it really means to have prosperity, and how she speaks to that spiritual person's tendency to say that they want abundance when in fact that's greed and ego that's kind of got mixed up in it. Something I've seen a lot with people as justifying their greed by calling it abundance. And so she has a really neat insight into that shifted my perception. And instead of abundance, thinking in terms of sufficiency, to always have enough happiness, enough money, enough of everything. So then the third one will probably be the one that I'm going through right now. That's really present for me is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's something so timeless about it in terms of how to acknowledge others. I was turned off by the title, I remember, and put off.
I thought you would be.
Yeah, because it just seems so manipulative, the title. But he makes it very clear that do not do any of these tactics of acknowledging others, making people feel seen and loved and understood and listened to, expecting something in return, right? The only thing that you could possibly want in return might be the satisfaction of them feeling heard and seen and appreciated, right? And then whatever happens from that is what happens from that. And I think this is such a context for being a human being that would be so powerful if we each held that as a standard to live into. I find myself like wishing I could just like download into people's brains that book when I see how they're being at times, and the defensiveness and ego and all that and disinterest in others. But that's just such a masterpiece. So I would say those three.
Okay, the second question, we talk about food a bit on the podcast. So the question is, what's the best meal you've ever had?
Wow. I'm amazed if people can just immediately recite that off the top of their head. That's such a great question.
Dim sum.
Well, I could think about some like college meals I had under the influence that were
particularly tasty at the time.
Incredible. Exactly. But I would say nowadays, a really great meal for me would be something that I listen to my body. And that's been a key thing for me, is learning to listen to my body, where the body's saying, yes, eat more of this. No, do not touch that ever again. Our bodies are speaking to us all the time. So what my body is saying yes to is oftentimes some steamed vegetables, a little salad, some fish. That tends to make up the majority of the eating for me, where I feel more energy afterwards. I remember hearing that when you're eating the right food, you have more energy afterwards. And when you're eating the wrong food, you have less energy afterwards. So anything that gives me energy would be it. And certainly the vegetables is a big part of that.
And finally, what have you learned in the last 30 days that you think everyone should know? Or 31 days is fine, by the way.
This is a reminder one that all we have is a present moment, and any conversation we have is never a means to an end. It's about how we make people feel moment to moment. And it's our responsibility, if we're gifted the opportunity to be in someone's presence, to make that person feel good. That's our responsibility. And we could easily shrug that off and say, well, it ain't my responsibility. And that could be a point of view you take. I choose to not take that point of view. I take on the point of view that it's my responsibility to make people feel good. I want that responsibility. It gives meaning to my life. It makes me happy. You know, the conversations are a lot better. Business is a lot better. Everything is better when I take on the responsibility to make others feel good. So that's been the reminder recently.
Thanks so much, Jon. So tell us a little bit before we close, where people can connect with you online and what you'd like folks to know about what's coming up for you next.
Absolutely. So if you feel called and you're listening to this, that speaking might be a next level for you, and you believe that you have a message, and you're probably right, you do have a message that can be monetized and impact many lives going forward, then I invite you to connect with Speaker Venture. And that's a really simple process. You can go to a link. It's speakerventure.com, speakerventure.com/gifts, GIFTS. And what you'll get when you go to that page is our template for the signature talk. So this will begin to walk you through what it's like to actually design a presentation from stage and how to be very effective with audiences. That'll be the first step towards that. And you can also find me in other ways on social media. through Teresa and Steven to find me. But certainly, if you feel like you're on the speaker journey, then we'd love to connect with you, Speaker Venture, and perhaps I'll speak with you personally and see how we can best serve you.
Awesome, Jon. Thank you very, very much for your time. It's been really, really great to chat with you and connect and hear some really deep wisdom from your experiences in your life.
Thanks, guys. And thank you for all that you guys do. It's really making a difference out there.
All right, that's it for this week's Ownstream podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed our wonderful conversation with Jon Block. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode for links to everything mentioned, including Jon's Speaker Venture Program site, all the books he talked about, and his social media profiles. All of that can be found at ownstream.co/Jon Block. That's ownstream.co/JONBLOCK.
Also, before we let you go, please sign up for our weekly tip-off email at ownstream.co and just click the sign up button in the upper right-hand corner. This is where we share each Monday 3 cool things we've learned in the last week in the areas of lifestyle, business, and spirit. This could be an amazing quote, individual, tip, or tool designed to bring you more freedom and power in your life. So definitely sign up for that, again, at ownstream.co, and just click sign up.
Finally, follow us on Twitter at Ownstream and on Instagram, where we post regularly at own_stream. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Ownstream podcast. To learn more and connect with us, please visit ownstream.co or follow us on Twitter at Ownstream and Instagram at own_stream.